Gaming with this would be even worse. So that's what you want to avoid. Frame time graph as low as possible. And it's not having a lot of big stutters. Oh, hello. Hello, and welcome to another Tech Talk video. But it's not about racing, really. It's more about the hardware. Doing a checklist video to help you get the most out of your fancy new direct drive wheel with the low slew rate and super fast monitor with the lowest refresh rate, expensive PC and everything, and you're still not getting a good experience out of it. There's some reasons for that, and there's some tools for that. So yeah, this is Nesterowicz Racing, and I've been doing PC builds since the late 90s. So not only Simracing, last 10 years properly, but always been into working with the hardware and PC tuning and stuff like that. And first up, I want to segment it a bit. See here, like the first thing I want to cover is the hardware and the BIOS settings. Then I want to talk about some Windows optimization, how you want to, what is important here to do. And then at the end, I'll have a quick look at the iRacing settings and NVCP, NVIDIA Control Panel, which of course in the end is defining a lot of the performance you get. But you can find so many videos online right now that cover this that I won't go into details. Some of them know what they're talking about and did a lot of testing. Some of them just copy paste others. And one thing you should know is iRacing is constantly changing the graphics engine or the feature set incoming. So they get outdated quite fast. The Windows things, I think, and the computer things, you need to have these in place before you start fiddling with the other stuff. So let's get to it. First thing, hardware and the BIOS. So I will always start when I talk to people to like, have you adjusted your RAM timings? Look at the speed timing of the RAM. So right here, all new PCs have a default setting and a fast setting. And they are often called XMP, Expo, UCC. Needs to be enabled. Pick any of the presets, and as long as the system stays stable after that, keep it at that setting, which is recommended. And often these settings are actually more stable than the default one. There's Windows, right? CPU ID. It's a freeware software I recommend everybody to use. You can get the data you need about your computer without having to open up, and so you can see CPU, you can see the speed it's running, and so on, the version and voltage. But you can also see your motherboard, memory. So this is where it gets interesting. It's called SPD. That's the settings that are embedded in the chip, and you need to set that up on your motherboard. See here, I have 4 slots on the motherboard. I have 0 in slot 1, and I have a memory in slot 2, nothing in the third, and another one in the fourth. So running dual channel, good old things. Yeah, that's why I always usually buy 2, because they assist each other to make better speed. But you need to enable, as here, it's XMP 2.0. I'm running an old system, still DDR4, but it's the same setup in DDR5. So, and actually right here you can see the different profiles that are built into my memory. So the default, if I just put it in a computer and it boots, it will run 1266 Hertz times 2, and with the timings below. The more you pay for expensive RAM, the higher the megahertz. Also, the lower the timings. The lower the timings, the faster the megahertz. So you can see there's a big difference from running 1266 and 1860. But it also uses a bit more power. So make sure to enable this in your motherboard. Found a video of a basic example here. Let's see it, yeah. So find the setting in your BIOS. It could look like this. In advanced mode, don't be scared to find advanced mode. Most settings are on auto anyway, but this one is important. And right now, it's disabled. So look what this guy does. Pushes it, and he gets two choices. And you pick the one that has the best timings, you might say. You know, DDR5 has higher timings, but pick the one with the lowest. And if that's stable, run with that. And there's software software you can test RAM as well. That's a separate thing. I won't get into that. But you will see if it's stable or not quite fast. No blue screens and stuff like that. So yeah, find your BIOS settings and XMP, Expo, or DOCP profile. Every BIOS looks different. So the app, CPU Z, CPU ID, everywhere. Find it. This one, CPUID.com. And yeah, you can actually also check your graphics card. Let's move on to the CPU. So right here, CPU in today's system stay out of clock. In the old days, you needed to set it just like the RAM here, and you would make sure it had the best performance. But now I would say, if you're not, like, you get 95, 99 best results just leaving it on auto. I know these days people are talking about underclocking, and that's also effective, but I'm not going to get into that. That's separate videos. I think the most important thing to note here is, of course, it needs to run the specified speed. Put it on auto, it will find out, but it should not hit thermal limits, thermal throttling. Thermal throttling, I have to mention it simply because some people don't think, but you need to make sure that the CPU is cool enough. In this case, if you look at the blue curve, that's the temperature, and here everything is good, you know, and then it reaches above a certain level, and then the built-in CPU or thermostat, what do you call it? It just says, okay, if I continue going this way, the temperature will be too high, so I need to downclock. And it does this with, see these red spikes here, to get the temperature down. So it will continue to do this if the temperature is up there. And you guessed it, if your CPU is doing this all the time, then you will get stutters in your racing game and gaming, and the frame time will be a variable. And I think, yeah. And this is basic for some, but not for everyone. Let's say you had a fan here that was blowing in as well. That will screw up stuff a lot. You need to make a path to it, you know, or just these going the other way. Then it would not get enough cold air in. You know, that's very important. My system, I only have fans in below because, you know, temperature rise, so I have fans getting cold air from the bottom only, and it goes through the system downwards up and also up. But think about this. You can see more videos about that everywhere on YouTube, but this is quite essential to make sure that you have sufficient cooling and a good airflow in your case, both for the GPU and the CPU. These days also the RAM can get quite hot. So avoid thermal throttling. Let's move on to the next thing. NVMe disks and hard drives, you might say. That's actually more important as well these days compared to once upon a time, because it has been an evolution, as you can see here. Zoom this in. Back in days, you're running on old hard drives spinning around. They had a very low access time and a low transfer speed. Then you got SATA disks and SSD disks also on SATA. Now we move to NVMe. These are the small chips that you put on your motherboard, and they have an incredible high amount of transfer rate, but they are also faster on the access time. So just to put it in perspective, you see here, this is how the generations have changed on from PCA first generation, second, third, and right now you see a lot of PCs with Gen 3 and Gen 4, and right now the new ones are PC Gen 5. But do not get distracted by, like, you look at this like double performance. No, if a game needs to access files directly from your disk, which it doesn't do that much because it's a lot of it is already loaded as graphics in the video memory, but some files are still needed, and so you need a quick access time. I don't have graphs of access time for these, but it does not just double. And why do I care about it? Because I'll show you here. That was the disks. So yeah, I want to show you how I do, but also a little thing to note is yeah, last thing about that, try to not fill them up too much. As I have a picture here, just Google it. Does NVMe SSD slow down when full? It's actually also the case with the old ones. They were also getting slower, but this one is quite sensitive to it. SSD is using space that was already once filled with data, and this means it has to clear it before it writes to it. If the drive is not full, it can just write to unused data, which is a lot faster. I think this is correct. So I have some tricks for this, if you might say. Always go with 2 NVMEs, or 1 SSD and 1 NVMe. Let me go into my disk manager. Now let's see, you just press right mouse button on the Windows. Right. Disk management, disk manager. You will get this window here. So this is how my system. I can recommend everybody to do this. This is actually just a regular SSD disk, and I'm running my operating system. I have 2 operating systems, but Windows 11 on this one, and then files for streaming and multiple files I use for OBS and stuff on another on the same disk, but on a different partition. I separated the disk into 2 partitions. I'll get to why. Then I have another disk here, which is with the other system. Here I have Windows 10. This is the installation I use for Simracing. And on the other partition on that, I only have photos. I never use this together with this. Photos is like when I do photo editing. I've done a lot of photos over the years, and I save photos there as well. So on this disk, I only have my system, and it's on NVMe disk. So this is a very fast one, not a big one, but very fast. Samsung Pro something also needs to be updated. Operating system here, and then I have another fast NVMe disk on 1 terabyte, and on here I have the games. So Windows is writing and requesting info from this, and the game is getting it from this. So I'm using the bandwidth. I optimize it so it's not all requested from the same disk. So it's small things. I can recommend to do this if you have 2 disks, and then you can just like slice them up in partitions and do this. Just want to show you that that way you can also save some space. It's like, I know I don't have that many photos, so this disk will always be quite empty, you might say. And yeah, games are very big these days, so right now it's a bit too full, but yeah, it is. But I will be upgrading soon. I think that's what I want to cover with the NVMEs. Try to avoid to fill it up. I think 70% is really bad if you do that with your SSD or NVMe. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, so let's move on to the Windows optimization and software segment. That's a big one. And yeah, I'll just try to do it on the fly here. So I just covered the SSD partitions, or disk partitions, which I think is quite essential. And then the next thing is, should you use Windows 11 or Windows 10? You know, I'm not gonna go into a big fight here. Of course, there's some features on Windows 11 that are nice, and it has also enabled some, I think some benefits for SSDs. But if you look at benchmarks, the Windows 10 has been faster so long, and recently was a big update on Windows 11. You can see that Windows 10 again was faster. They changed it, so now Windows 11 is on the same level as Windows 10. I don't use Windows 11 for sim racing. I think there's too much bullshit in it, and it's inconsistent. It has mistakes, and there's some things that are changed that are not working for me. But do your thing. I think having updated the drivers and done some of the other stuff is more important than selecting the right option. But when you're in Windows, there's a couple of things you need to make sure to utilize your system better. GPU scheduling. See, press on your keyboard like the Windows button. See it, you know. This is the one I just press every time. I just write whatever I want. Like now I'm just gonna write GPU. It says graphical settings. So, and you get this window, or you can find it in control panel. Hardware accelerated. This has to be on. So from that, it will prioritize the GPU when you work. Variable refresh rate, that's more optional. If you have a monitor that supports it and a graphics card that support it, but I do, but I use the NVIDIA control panel to control that. So then what do we have? Game mode. Again, I press Windows, game. I don't want to push that one. That's the Xbox game bar, which I want to disable. This is okay. I'm just gonna jump this one slowly. Game bar. I have disabled that. Again, I'm sure you know already. So many overlays you're gonna have with this app. You know, you want to minimize the amount of overlays you have. So game bar uses resources, as far as I know, and yeah, I would recommend to disable this because it's also connected to the Xbox and Microsoft Store app somehow, and I disable it. Yeah, let's go. Turn on game mode. So there's a setting called game mode. Enable that. I don't know what it does, but yeah, always enable that. I would actually just use the task manager. See that? Open the task manager and go to startup. I think it's quite similar to the below. So it is. It's exactly the same. Okay, do it either way. I'm gonna do it the way I'm used to. We just sort it here. So enable Edge, yeah. Discord, yeah. I use that every time anyway. Microsoft Security, keep it. Elgato, keep it. If you have some Adobe, disable it. Like it's not needed for sim racing, right? Stream Deck, you need it as well. Windows Host, don't touch it. Adobe RGB, that's a thing I'm just running on my. Instead of having, have RGB software for graphics card, for your mouse, and keyboard, and fans and stuff on the motherboard. I just have one app that runs it, so I'm using that one. Garage 61 or some telemetry, that makes sense to have, but otherwise, if you have a big list here of stuff, just disable, This is startup, it's just, it preloads it, but if you want to have, optimize your CPU or the frame time, like the less is running in the background, the better. And I mentioned it here, Steam, Origin, Epic, all that. Disable them. When you use them, then you turn them on. That's cool. But until then, just if they are on your list here, just disable. Even Microsoft Edge, disable that as well. So GPU scheduling, game mode on, game bar off, startup apps, and then we have this one, Superfetch. This is a bit. I'll take this one in the end. Then we have fast boot. Let's go to the power settings. Power. So you have these, and I think I've seen a lot of videos on this, and some say it changes something, some say it doesn't change anything. But one thing it can do, if you have it unbalanced or power save, it will disable some USB if they're not used, or it thinks they're not used, and that can cause quite some problems if it's your Wheelbase, if it's your Steam Deck, or I don't know, Stream Deck. So put it on ultimate performance or high performance. You can enable this one, that's a separate thing. Google it. It's not every computer that has this. Do this. That's recommended, sure, but how much it changes, I don't know. And then I wrote that disable fast boot. Settings. Then change setting. Here, turn on fast startup recommend. If you do this, it will just save and build up buffer files and cache. I recommend disable it. It's not a game changer, and it will boot just as fast these days anyway when you have NVMe disk. So I would not put this one on. Covered this one. Covered this one. I'll go to this one soon. Then Windows updates. Before a race, I do this. For race day, go check for updates, and I press the pause button. And I press it, and I say, push it forward. You don't need to update all the time unless something is really wrong. I know Windows forces it. Can't always change it, but yeah. So here's one I think is quite important. Discord. Let's turn that on. They actually write them themselves. So go to settings. And I think it is in advanced. Yeah. Sorry, this is Danish. Hardware acceleration. Disable that one. It takes some resources. And as it says here, disable this if you experience your FPS dropping. So it runs fine without hardware acceleration. Who needs? Honestly, it's a voice app. Don't use all sorts of things from your GPU. Let the GPU handle the game. Same goes with your browser. I don't know what browser you're using. Too many, but they also use hardware acceleration. I have disabled mine. This Windows for Simracing, I keep it very clean. Basically, only Simracing software and stuff is installed here. And so, again, disable hardware acceleration on apps that don't need it when you are in iRacing. Then we have drivers. A lot of people forget about this one. I will recommend to basically go turn on your browser and search. Let's check the motherboard. CPU. Let's check first. You open the program here and press mainboard, and you can look. Oh, okay, I got the the chipset. I would take X578. That's the name. -E drivers. Let's see where we end up. So you can go to the website of the brand that you have, or on AMD's. And I would definitely go on AMD's own in this case, or Intel if you have an Intel chipset. So, and yeah, select the version of Windows you have, this one, and then download this and install the latest. Simple. The chipset drivers are important because they work with Windows and with your hardware, and make sure you utilize your RAM, CPU, and all the communication from USB and so on. Then NVIDIA and NCVP, NVIDIA or NVCP, NVIDIA Control Panel. There's so many videos on this. I won't dig deep on this. I can show you the settings I'm using. Based on some experience, I've been fiddling with this way too much. I'm never gonna get clever on it. But you can go into 3D settings and then select what program it should use what settings on. And one thing I do use is after I got this monitor OLED with the variable refresh rate, low latency, and I capped the frames at 240. And this, I think, is quite important. Either you cap frames in iRacing or some other app, see Afterburner, or cap it in the NVIDIA control panel. Because there's no reason to run 300 or 500 FPS, because you will push the limits of your CPU and your GPU, and you can say, wow, Daniel, I'm running like a Frametime on 2, and that's awesome. But when it gets more demanding, it doesn't have any overhead. So if you're pushing the system to the max all the time, temperatures will rise. You might even thermal throttle or hit the limit. That's why if you see some of my videos here before or after, you can see my frame time, and you can also see the temperatures. They're not very high. So make it match best possible. Don't it's not cool to show, oh, I'm running 500 FPS if your system just starts to overheat and has less overhead when the more demanding graphic requests arrive. So that's what I do. And then, power management, I put it on maximum. Then you have a clamp and triple buffering and vertical sync, because I'm running it with, that's also maybe even wrong, but I tested it. It feels really, really good. So, like, it's very fluid. But the G-Sync, I think there's some rules for that. This is how I'm running it right now, and it feels really good. The last thing I want to cover with the Windows optimization software is Superfetch. This is main. I have to look up how I do it. It will take me a second. But I only do this once I make a fresh install. Basically, this is Windows, again, a bit like startup apps, but it tries to learn your way of working with the computer, and it just boots things up in the background before you push the button, and it does that actually. This was a big. Everybody hated Windows Vista, Windows 7, no, Windows Vista came out, and computers were not strong enough to run this software. Right now, it runs in the back of all Windows. People are not complaining because computers have NVMe disks now and multiple cores and so on. But actually, you can disable this, and it might give you a little extra headroom. Let me see how I do this. Okay, so I found this good document I saved. It says press Windows R for run. Put it up. and ask it, just type in services.msc. Okay. And you get, yeah, here it is. Just minimize this one. See it? And yeah, I would say this is optional to do, but I do it every time I install. So good. Startup disable. Okay. So because Windows could enable it again. So do two things. Right click, stop, right click, properties. This is simply a service running in the back, and I have it disabled. It's a small thing. But yeah, gotta get into the details. Trying to help you out here. So let's look at the iRacing and NVIDIA control plan. Yeah, that's good. Right. NVIDIA control plan. I think I covered that one briefly. And let's look at some of the iRacing settings I'm using. So of course the resolution needs to match your, again, your monitor, everything. Resolution scaling, it's a bit, it's interesting because what's happening there. Right now I'm not using it, but maybe in the future it will be quite beneficial. Anyway, if you're running a NVIDIA, I'm running a 4090. Just enable boost reflex. It's features to again lower the latency a bit. And, yeah, these are different settings anyway. But on the performance side, I'd say this is high run. I'm not gonna run through all of this except say that I value having the cars in high quality, not changing how they look. Um, and yeah, this is how my settings are. Full res, use that on this one, and for particles, for seeing the details on track, which are essential for driving, if you ask me. One thing I always do is running, I don't see a lot of cars ahead, 20, and 8 cars in the mirrors. I think that's enough for me to feel immersed and having the best experience. If you put this up, my experience is that, you know, iRacing is not using only the GPU, it's also using your CPU quite a lot, and the frame time will get a lot higher the more cars you draw as well. So it's not only GPU. This one has to be on 63 or 64. I think 63 is max, so your overlays are working perfectly. Then I always draw minimum pits because I don't need to look at other pits. You know, I can see my own pit crew, pit guy, that's it. So that's just my little input. But one thing a lot of people do not know what this is, dynamic level of detail, as written below. If your FPS drops below 60, it will use one of these about the world. It will, in this case, it will just remove objects from the map, you know, the racetrack, like the grandstands or whatever, pit objects and so on, until it reaches above 60 FPS. Usually per default, it's on plus and minus, you know, on medium, max, you know, but plus and minus. What that means is that if you hit 60, it will remove items, so you will go above 60, right? And if you hit above 60, it will enable them again, you know? So let's say you go below, you go to 50 FPS, it removes items. Go around the track, and it hits, uh, it looks good, and you're on 100 FPS, and it's like, oh, you're running 100 FPS. Let's just add the items again, and it loads them. You will see this on some people's stream, like, and it's loading this item or some distance of the screen. When it does that, I think the graphical engine has some limits, and what happens in that case, you will get stutters, and you will, maybe not a lot, but you will get stutters because it needs to load and reload these things. And again, in some part of the track, you will run high FPS, some low FPS. And again, you have that location, which is not very immersive. You know? So I have it on world minus, because if it ever goes below, I think I would say 90 in my case. I don't want it below 90. It happens, but ideally not. then it will remove some items from the world. And then on the car side, I actually have it off because, as I just mentioned, I wanted to always show the car properly. So it will not, yeah, it will neither remove details or add details. It's just always static. And I think I cannot race a racing game and see the pixels changing on the car. Like that doesn't, but it's more square. That's actually what it does. It removes some geometry. So that I wanted to have out of the way. As again, I'm not an expert at this, but I've been working with PC games for many, many, many years, and I know some of it. And that brings me to this one: ansiotropic filtering and MSAA sampling. These are two very different things, and people just look at numbers like, oh, you know. But always put this one on 16. Should not, as someone mentioned in another video, it should not even be here anymore. It just needs to be on max always. The performance hit is so minimal, and what it does is when you look at the racing line, or racing line, like the white lines, let's say this, they you will see it will become more square and more flat, and just disperse into like faded graphics if you have it set on anything lower than 60. I wish actually they put it higher. I don't know if that even exists, but this is stock. Keep it on 60. But the one below, that's a very heavy hitter. You know, back in the games, back in the days, you did not even run 1x. You always run at 1x. Point is, it's how many times it actually renders the same frame, and then it adds pixels in between to make the jagged edges less jagged. You know, and that's why if you even from 2 to 4, it takes double the performance hit. And from 4 to 8, double the performance hit. So 4 is even high when you're running a triple setup or like this. This is not like very extreme pixel rate, but it will actually have to make double this with 4. That's just a thing to consider. I would keep it on 4 because then the lines just don't seem jagged, and I'm also running like 1440, so I have some vertical pixels as well, so that's pretty nice. And I think the fidelity and the quality is quite high. If you're running 1080, then yeah, definitely put this one on 4 and maybe even on 8. But look at the frame time, okay? So, but this one is a very, very heavy. So, and other things I want to note is lights. Usually it says on 3. Running night races, put it on 2 because this one really takes a lot of energy out of the GPU. Shader quality, I know some people did testing. Don't know if it's Dan Suzuki, but if you put it ultra versus high, it's barely any difference, but it gives you a little more FPS again. This is how I run, yeah, and mirrors as well. They also take a lot of control in the system. Anyway, look at my frame time. Let's get in the car and do a lap, and we can see the replay afterwards because that has different settings. But I don't have my fancy racing shoes on, but I do have the car ready. I just want to show you the frame time I find optimal. Of course, the lower the better, but this is a bit older system. But yeah, have a look. I think it's
disengage limiter.
Quite stable frame time, and ideally this is I think this is what it should look like. You know, no big fluctuations, no sudden spikes, and the frame time can be used to monitor what's going on in the system, as you will see some of the other examples I have after this. It's a bit gonna be driving this track for a race soon, so yeah, to get acquainted with it again. I don't do Road Atlanta that much, but anyway, look at the frame time. It was below 4, jumping 3.5, 3.6, to 6 milliseconds. But again, it's more important to look at not how low the number goes, but how solid the line is. Keep an eye on it, and I think if you are not using this to monitor your system, and you have stutters, and then you're not, and it's hard to complain about something, you know, either the game or your system. You know, you need to find out what's causing the stutters. The less responsive and the slower is the communication from the visual, what's happening for you, to your steering wheel as well. Because you get the inputs fast on your steering wheel, you are not getting it from the visual. So the more you can make the ends meet, you know, you have a wheelbase with a very fast slew rate, you know, high slew rate, and a monitor with ultra fast response time as well, and everything. You bought an expensive PC. You should be seeing frame times on this or below, you know. I think, yeah, of course, in race it's different. You can see the example soon, but yeah, again, have it as stable as possible. That's a dream scenario, and it doesn't stay like this in races for me neither, you know. Okay, so here we have a different scenario. It's a replay where I put the quality very high. You can see the frame time is very low. It's still a bit steady, going up and down, but okay, not that steady. But not big stutters. But this is not nice to play on. Like, it doesn't feel responsive, and as you can see, it's 30 milliseconds is in the 30s FPS. So that's really, I would say, unplayable. But as long as the stutters don't surprise you, you can still interact with it, you know. I'm just gonna jump through the cameras where you can see how stutters will look like very high. So, like gaming with this would be even worse. So that's what you want to avoid. Anything. Again, we're aiming to get a bit more stable frame time, and that's why all these settings matter, to make sure it runs as smooth as possible to match your very fine DD wheel and yeah, and your high refresh rate monitors. They don't matter if your frame time is jumping all over the place or is very high, as you can see. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and hopefully it can help you identify and find some things in your system and get a lower frame time, or definitely more consistent. So bad. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned, and see you for the next tech talk video.
That lap was a 119.29. Sector 3 times okay.
Low 18, high 17s. I think that's possible. It should be. Keep the frame time low. You will have the best out of your expensive hardware. Any questions? Throw them in the comments, and I'll try to see if I can help you out. Take care.